right, welcome back to the Honoring the Digital Platform Adapt Your Promo Skills course, okay? This next one, I think, is going to be maybe one of the most kind of enlightening modules where you connect a lot of dots here, okay? And it's broadcast versus digital. I'm not saying which one is better. I'll let you decide that. But we have to understand how broadcast worked, why it was successful. There were psychological tactics that worked that made it successful. So once we understand exactly how broadcasts work in terms of like breaking a new artist, and then we can determine what's currently broken about broadcast, and we know why it's not working as well, then we can take those same types of methodologies and apply them to digital and then create success. Because it's one thing to know how the digital platform is consumed. It's another thing to know exactly what tactics and strategies are what worked on broadcast that you need to apply to digital. Maybe you have to apply it a different way and use a different method to make it work on digital because it's consumed differently, but the basics are the same. So I say this because I get asked a lot from labels, heads, of indie labels, management companies, artists, investors. Because it's unfamiliar to them on digital, they're like, okay, so what's my return? How does this work? How do I end up getting paid? And then I tell them, well, I'll ask the question on your last release. You went to radio, obviously. How did that work for you, and how did you get paid? And usually the answer is, well, it didn't, which is why they're talking to me to begin with. And that's why we're here. Okay, so how did it work? What were the steps? How did you go from spinning a record on a radio station to getting into enough times to all of a sudden you're an artist now, and you can sell tickets and you're going to sell product. They're going to buy your CDs or consume your streams. How did that work before? Let's talk about that and then break everything down. And I think it's going to get your creative juices flowing. Some of the stuff I'm going to talk about on broadcast, listen, I want you to pay attention to this. Don't get me wrong, okay? A lot of it is, I'm not going to really cover anything that you don't already know, but I promise you haven't thought about it this way. And you haven't thought about it in a long time either. You just know radio. That's familiar. That's the devil you know. Digital's the devil you don't. So you're a lot more trusting on the devil you know, even though that's devil. All right? So pay attention to this, because even the most, if we break it down to the most basic levels of how it works, it's an eye-opener. And by the way, I used to do this to sell the fire out of these machines that I sold when I was in the electronics industry and electronics manufacturing. And I was in the top levels of like Raytheon, Propulsion Labs, JPL, who put the rover on the moon, or on the Mars, excuse me, in Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, in the DOD, in the Naval Air Warfare Center, Raytheon, Hughes Aerospace. This is the top brains that we have in electronics working in these programs, and I'm talking to those top brains, and because they're dealing with solder, right? So I'm going to tell you this just because I want you to understand the story. It's be, a minute or less. But solder's tin, lead, that's the metal that conducts the electricity through all the chips and all of our electronics and everything that we do, whether it's a satellite or your iPhone, whatever. The chips are soldered onto a circuit board. That solder reflows or melts in regular plain English at a certain temperature, which is 183 degrees centigrade. And when components and parts and consumer products are made, they go through very, very specific heat profiles so that everything is expanding and contracting at the same time, because metal expands really fast and conductors expand really slow, so that it doesn't damage the board or damage the components, and you have the utmost integrity. And then when they come out of the oven on the other end, if it's a consumer product and something needs to be fixed, they're going to take a soldering iron at 750 degrees centigrade And they're going to burn the crap out of that board with a tool that's a derivative of a wood burning tool. And they can also be doing that on a $500,000 satellite board. And so it's just the way it's always been done. So the first question I would ask when I would go in there with all these doctorates of electronics and these amazing minds would be, who here can tell me what's the reflow temperature of solder? What temperature does it melt at? Sometimes I get an answer, somebody that's really smart and right on time. Mostly they'd be like, holy crap. They'd be embarrassed that they forgot that they knew that. So fundamentals count. And so let's get into the fundamentals of broadcast and digital, because you can't fix the problem unless we go back to the fundamentals. Why did it work? How did it work? How did it break? Can we do it over here? Okay.